This is Mr. B reads J.R.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, and we're going to start with the incredible work of The Fellowship of the Ring, arguably one of the best books ever written. This story series is aimed at our older children in years 4, 5 and 6, and we're going to enjoy listening with it to the incredible soundtrack from the films, the music of Howard Shore. So sit back and enjoy the wonderful work and music of Lord of the Rings. J.R.R. Tolkien's The Fellowship of the Ring, Book 2, Chapter 2, The Council of Elrond, Part 1. Next day Frodo woke early, feeling refreshed and well. He walked along the terraces above the loud flowing Brunnen and watched the pale, cool sun rise above the far mountain and shine down, slanting through the thin silver mist. Sam walked beside him, saying nothing but sniffing the air and looking every now and again with wonder in his eyes at the great heights in the east. The snow was white upon their peaks. On a seat cut in the stone beside a turn in the path, they came upon Gandalf and Bilbo deep in talk. "Hello, good morning," said Bilbo. "Feel ready for the great council?" "I feel ready for anything," answered Frodo. Suddenly, as they were talking, a single clear bell rang out. "That is the warning bell for the Council of Elrond," cried Gandalf. "Come along now, both you and Bilbo are wanted." Frodo and Bilbo followed the wizard quickly along the path back to the house. Behind them, uninvited and for the moment forgotten, trotted Sam. Gandalf led them to the porch where Frodo had found his friends the evening before. To Frodo, his dangerous flight and the rumours of the darkness growing in the world outside already seemed only the memories of a troubled dream, but the faces that were turned to meet them as they entered were grave. Elrond was there, and several others were seated in silence about him. Frodo saw Glorfindel and Gloin, and in a corner alone Strider was sitting, clad in his old travel-worn clothes again. Elrond drew Frodo to a seat by his side and presented him to the company, saying, "Here, my friends, is the hobbit, Frodo, son of Drogo. Few have ever come hither through greater peril or on an errand more urgent." He then pointed out and named those whom Frodo had not met before. There was a younger dwarf at Gloin's side, his son Gimli. Beside Glorfindel there were several other councillors of Elrond's household, of whom Erestor was the chief. There was also a strange elf clad in green and brown, Legolas, a messenger from his father Thranduil, the king of the elves of northern Mirkwood. And seated a little apart was a tall man with a fair and noble face, dark-haired and grey-eyed, proud and stern of glance. He was cloaked and booted as if for a journey on horseback, and indeed, though his garments were rich and his cloak was lined with fur, they were stained with long travel. On a baldric he wore a great horn tipped with silver that now was laid upon his knees. He gazed at Frodo and Bilbo with sudden wonder. "Here," said Elrond, turning to Gandalf, "is Boromir, a man from the south. He arrived in the grey morning and seeks for counsel. I have bidden him to be present, for here his questions will be answered." Not all that was spoken and debated in the council need now be told. Much was said of events in the world outside, especially in the south and in the wide lands east of the mountains. Of these things Frodo had already heard many rumours, but the tale of Gloin was new to him, and when the dwarf spoke he listened attentively. It appeared that amid the splendour of all their works, the hearts of the dwarves of the lonely mountain were troubled. "It is now many years," said Gloin, "that a shadow of disquiet fell upon our people. Hence it came we did not at first perceive. Words began to be whispered in secret. It was said that we were hemmed in a narrow place, and that greater wealth and splendour would be found in a wider world. Some spoke of Moria, the mighty works of our fathers that are called in our own tongue Khazad-dûm, and they declared that now at last we had the power and numbers to return." Gloin sighed. "Moria, Moria, wonder of the northern world. Too deep we delved there, and woke the nameless fear. Long have its vast mansions lain empty since the children of Durin fled. But now we spoke of it again with longing, and yet with dread, for no dwarf has dared to pass the doors of Khazad-dûm for many lives of kings, save Thror only, and he perished. At last, however, Balin listened to the whispers and resolved to go, and though Dain did not give leave willingly, he took with him Ori and Oin and many of our folk, and they went away south. That was nigh on 30 years ago. For a while we had news, and it seemed good. Messages reported that Moria had been entered and a great work begun there. Then there was silence, and no word has ever come from Moria since. And so I have been sent at last by Dain, so we crave the advice of Elrond, for the shadow grows and draws nearer." "You have done well to come," said Elrond. "You will hear today all that you need in order to understand the purpose of the enemy. There is naught that you can do other than to resist, with hope or without it. But you do not stand alone. You will learn that your trouble is but part of the trouble of all the Western world. The ring, what shall we do with the ring, the least of rings, the trifle that Sauron fancies? That is the purpose for which you called hither. Called, I say, though I have not called you to me, strangers from distant lands. You have come, and are here met, in this very nick of time, by chance, as it may seem. Yet it is not so. Believe rather that it is ordered that we, who sit here, and none others, must now find counsel for the peril of the world. Now therefore things shall be spoken openly that have been hidden from all but a few until this day. And first of all, so that we understand what the peril is, the tale of the ring shall be told from the beginning, even to this present, and I will begin that tale, though others shall end it. Then all listened while Elrond in his clear voice spoke of Sauron and the rings of power and their forging in the second age of the world long ago. A part of this tale was known to some there, but the full tale no one knew, and many eyes were turned to Elrond in fear and wonder as he told of the elven smiths of Eregion and their friendship with Moria and their eagerness for knowledge by which Sauron ensnared them. For in that time he was not yet evil to behold, and they received his aid and grew mighty in crafts, whereas he learned all their secrets and betrayed them, and forged secretly in the mountain fire the one ring to be their master. And then there was war, and the land was laid waste, and the gate of Moria was shut. Of Numenor he spoke, its glory and its fall, and the return of the kings of men to Middle-earth out of the deeps of the sea, borne upon the wings of storm. Then Elendil the Tall and his mighty sons, Isildur and Anarion, became great lords, and the northern realm they made in Arnor, and the southern realm in Gondor, above the mouths of Anduin. But Sauron of Mordor assailed them all, and they made the last alliance of elves and men, and the hosts of Gil-galad and Elendil were mustered in Arnor. Thereupon Elrond paused a while and sighed. At this the stranger Boromir broke in. So that is what became of the ring, he cried. If ever such a tale was told in the south, it has long ago been forgotten. I have heard of the great ring, and of him who we do not name, but we believed that the ring perished from the world in the ruin of his first realm. Isildur took it. That is tidings indeed. Alas, yes, said Elrond, it should have been cast then into the fires of Mount Doom, nigh at hand, where it was made. As a result, the victory of the last alliance was fruitless, and did not achieve its end. Sauron was diminished, but not destroyed. His ring was lost, but not unmade. The Dark Tower was broken, but its foundations were not removed, for they were made with the power of the ring, and while it remains they will endure. Yet Isildur took the ring for himself, and as such the evil persisted. In the north, after the war and the slaughter of the Gladdenfields, the men of Westerness were diminished. In the south, the realm of Gondor long endured, and for a while its splendour grew, recalling somewhat of the might of Numenor ere it fell. Their chief city was Osgiliath, citadel of the stars, through the mists of which the river flowed. A Minas Ithil were they built, tower of the rising moon, but in the wearing of the swift years of Middle-earth, the watch upon the walls of Mordor slept, and the dark things crept back to Gorgoroth. Their Minas Anor was named anew Minas Tirith, the tower of guard, but Osgiliath was deserted, and in its ruins shadows walked. So it has been for many lives of men, but the lords of Minas Tirith still fight on, defying our enemies, keeping the passage of the river free to the sea. And now that part of the tale that I shall tell is drawn to its close. For in the day of Isildur the ruling ring passed out of all knowledge, and the three were released from its dominion. But now in this latter day they are in peril once more. For to our sorrow the one ring has been found. Others shall speak of its finding, for in that I played small part. Elrond ceased to talk, and at once Boromir stood up, tall and proud, before them. Give me leave, Master Elrond, said he, first to say more of Gondor, for verily from the land of Gondor I am come, and it would be well for all to know what passes there. For few, I deem, know of our deeds, and therefore guess little of their peril if we should fail at last. Believe not that in the land of Gondor the blood of Numenor is spent, nor all of its pride and dignity forgotten. By our valour the wild folk of the east are still restrained, and the terror of Morgul kept at bay, and thus alone are peace and freedom maintained in the lands behind us, bulwark of the west. But if the passages of the river should be won, what then? Yet that hour maybe is not far away. The nameless enemy has arisen again. Smoke arises once more from Mount Doom. The power of the Black Land grows, and we are hard beset. But still we fight on, holding all the west shores of Anduin, and those who shelter behind us give us praise, if ever they hear our name. In this evil hour I have come on an errand over many dangerous leagues to Elrond. 110 days I have journeyed all alone. But I do not seek allies in war. The might of Elrond is in wisdom, not in weapons, it is said. I come to ask for counsel and the unravelling of hard words. For on the eve of sudden assault, a dream came to my brother in a troubled sleep, and afterwards a like dream came off to him again, and once to me. In that dream I thought the eastern sky grew dark, and there was growing thunder, but in the west a pale light lingered, and out of it I heard a voice, remote but clear, crying, Seek for the sword that was broken, in Imladris it dwells. There shall be counsels taken, stronger than Morgul spells. There shall be shown a token, that doom is near at hand, for Isildur's bane shall waken, and the halfling forth shall stand. Of these words we could understand little, and we spoke to our father Denethor, lord of Minas Tirith, wise in the law of Gondor. This only would he say, that Imladris was of old the name among the elves of a far northern dale, where Elrond, the half-elven, dwelt, greatest of lawmasters. Therefore my brother, seeing how desperate was our need, was eager to heed the dream and seek for Imladris, but since the way was full of doubt and danger, I took the journey upon myself. Loath was my father to give me leave, and long have I wandered my roads forgotten, seeking the house of Elrond, of which many had heard, but few knew where it lay. And here in the house of Elrond more shall be made clear to you, said Aragorn, standing up. He cast his sword upon the table that stood before Elrond, and the blade was in 2 pieces. Here is the sword that was broken, he said. And who are you, and what have you to do with Minas Tirith? Asked Boromir, looking in wonder at the lean face of the ranger in his weather-stained cloak. He is Aragorn, son of Arathorn, said Elrond, and he is descended through many fathers from Isildur, Elendil, son of Minas Ithil. He is the chief of the Dunedain in the north, and few are now left of that folk. Then it belongs to you, and not at all to me, cried Frodo in amazement, springing to his feet, as if he expected the ring to be demanded at once. It does not belong to either of us, said Aragorn, but it has been ordained that you should hold it for a while. Bring out the ring, Frodo, said Gandalf solemnly. The time has come. Then Boromir will understand the remainder of his riddle. There was a hush, and all eyes turned on Frodo. He was shaken by a sudden shame and fear, and he felt a great reluctance to reveal the ring, and a loathing of its touch. He wished he was far away. The ring gleamed and flickered as he held it up before him in his trembling hand. Behold Isildur's bane, said Elrond. Boromir's eyes glinted as he gazed at the golden thing. The halfling, he muttered. Is then the doom of Minas Tirith come at last? But why then should we seek a broken sword? The words were not the doom of Minas Tirith, said Aragorn, but doom and great deeds are indeed at hand, for the sword that was broken is the sword of Elendil, that broke beneath him when he fell. It has been treasured by his heirs when all other heirlooms were lost, for it was spoken of old among us that it should be made again when the ring, Isildur's bane, was found. Now you have seen the sword that you have sought, what would you ask? Do you wish for the house of Elendil to return to the land of Gondor? I was not sent to beg any aid, but to seek only the meaning of a riddle, answered Boromir proudly. Yet we are hard pressed, and the sword of Elendil would be a help beyond our hope. If such a thing could indeed return out of the shadows of the past. He looked again at Aragorn, and doubt was in his eyes. Frodo felt Bilbo stir impatiently at his side. Evidently he was annoyed on his friend's behalf. Standing suddenly up, he burst out. All that is gold does not glitter, not all those who wander are lost. The old that is strong does not wither, deep roots are not reached by the frost. From the ashes a fire shall be woken, a light from the shadows shall spring. Renewed shall be blade that was broken, the crownless again shall be king. Not very good perhaps, but to the point. If you need more beyond the word of Elrond, if that was worth the journey of 110 days to hear, you had best listen up, he said, and sat down with a snort. I made that up myself, he whispered to Frodo. For Aragorn, a long time ago when he first told me about himself, I almost wish that my adventures were not over, and that I could go with him again when his day comes. Aragorn smiled at him, and then he turned to Boromir again. For my part, I forgive your doubt, he said. Little do I resemble the figures of Elendil and Isildur, as they stand carven in their majesty in the halls of Denethor. I have had a hard and long life, and the leagues that lie between here and Gondor are a small part in the count of my journeys. I have crossed many mountains and many rivers, and trodden many plains, even into the far countries of Rhûn and Harad, where the stars are strange. But my home, such as I have, is in the north. For here the heirs of Valandil have ever dwelt, in long line and broken, from father unto son, for many generations. Our days have darkened and we have dwindled, but ever the sword has passed to a new keeper. And this I will say to you, Boromir, ere I end. Lonely men are we, rangers of the wild, hunters, but hunters ever of the servants of the enemy, for they are found in many places, not in Mordor only. But now the world is changing once again. A new hour comes, Isildur's bane is found, battle is at hand. The sword shall be reforged, I will come to Minas Tirith. Isildur's bane is found, you say, said Boromir. How did the wise know that this ring is his? And how has it passed down through the years until it is brought hither by so strange a messenger? That shall be told, said Elrond. Then Frodo told of his dealings with the ring from the day that it had passed into his keeping. Every step of his journey from Hobbiton to the ford of Brunnan was questioned and considered, and everything that he could recall concerning the Black Riders was examined. At last he sat down again. Not bad, Bilbo said to him. You have made a good story of it if they hadn't kept on interrupting. I tried to make a few notes, but we shall have to go over it all again sometime if I am to write it up. There were whole chapters of stuff before you ever got here. Yes, it made quite a long tale, answered Frodo, but the story still does not seem complete to me. I still want to know a good deal, especially about Gandalf. Also, what of Saruman? He is learned in the lore of the rings, Gandalf says, yet he is not among us. What is his counsel, if he knows the things that we have heard? The questions that you ask, Frodo, are bound together, said Elrond. I have not overlooked them, and they shall be answered. But these things are part of Gandalf's story to make clear, and I will call upon him last, for it is the place of honour, and in all this matter he has been chief. Gandalf sat silently, gazing eastward from the porch to the far peaks of the misty mountains, at whose great roots the peril of the world had so long lain hidden. He sighed. I have been at fault, he said. I was lulled by words of Saruman the Wise, but I should have sought for the truth sooner, and our peril would now be less. From the first my heart misgave me against all the reason that I knew, said Gandalf, and I desired to know this thing that came to Gollum, and how long he had possessed it. So I set a watch for him, guessing that he would come from the darkness to seek for his treasure. That was 17 years ago. Soon I became aware that spies of many sorts, even beasts and birds, were gathered around the Shire, and my fear grew. I called for the help of the Dunedain, and their watch was doubled, and I opened my heart to Aragorn, the heir of Isildur. And I, said Aragorn, counselled that we should hunt for Gollum, too late though it may seem. And since it seemed fit that Isildur's heir should labour to repair Isildur's fault, I went with Gandalf on the long and hopeless search. But after a long search through the mountains of shadows and dark hills, we never found him, and I at last despaired. And then in my despair I thought again of a test that might make the finding of Gollum unneeded. The ring itself might tell us if it were the one. The memory of words at the council came back to me, words of Saruman, half heeded at the time. I heard them now clearly in my heart. The 9, the 7 and the 3, he said, had each their proper gem. Not so the one. It was round and unadorned, as it were of the lesser rings, but its maker set marks upon it that the skilled, maybe, could still read and see. What those marks were he had not said. Who now would know? With that thought I forsook the chase and passed swiftly to Gondor. In former days the members of my order had been well received there. Less welcome did the Lord Denethor show me than of old, and grudgingly he permitted me to search among his hoarded scrolls and books. And there I found a scroll, said Gandalf. It was an extract written by Isildur, describing the ring such as he had found it first. It was hot when I first took it, hot as a gleed, and my hand was scorched, that I doubt if ever again I shall be free of the pain of it. Yet even as I write it is cooled. Already the writing upon it, which at first was as clear as red flame, fadeth, and is now only barely to be read. It is fashioned in an elven script of Eregion, for they have no letters in Mordor for such subtle work, but the language is unknown to me. I deem it to be a tongue of the Black Land, since it is foul and uncouth. What evil is said there I do not know, but I trace here a copy of it, lest it fade beyond recall. When I read these words, said Gandalf, my quest was ended, for the traced writing was indeed, as Isildur guessed, in the tongue of Mordor and the servants of the tower. For in the day that Sauron first put on the One Ring, he was heard to speak these words, and so his evil purposes were revealed. One ring to rule them all, one ring to find them, one ring to bring them all, and in the darkness bind them. A sudden change came in the wizard's voice. Suddenly it became menacing, powerful, harsh as stone. A shadow seemed to pass over the high sun, and the porch for a moment grew dark. All trembled, and the elves stopped their ears. Never before has any voice dared to utter these words, Gandalf the Grey, said Elrond, as the shadow passed and the company breathed once more. And let us hope that none will ever speak it here again, answered Gandalf. Nonetheless, I do not ask your pardon, for if that tongue is not soon to be heard in every corner of the West, then let all our doubt be put aside that this thing is indeed what the wise have declared, the treasure of the enemy. At once I took my leave of Denethor, but even as I went northwards, messages came to me out of Lorien that Aragorn had passed that way, and that he had found the creature called Gollum. Therefore I went first to meet him and hear his tale. Into what deadly perils he had gone alone I dared not guess. There is little need to tell of them here, said Aragorn, for man must needs walk in sight of the Black Gate or tread the deadly flowers of Morgul Vale, then perils he will have. I too despaired at last, and I began my homeward journey, and then by fortune I came suddenly on what I sought, the marks of soft feet beside a muddy pool. But now the trail was fresh and swift, and it led not to Mordor but away. Along the skirts of the dead marshes I followed it, and then I had him, lurking by a stagnant mere, peering in the water as the dark fell. I caught him, Gollum. He was covered with green slime. He will never love me, I fear, for he bit me, and I was not gentle. I rode back, watching him day and night, making him walk before me with a halter on his neck, driving him ever towards Mirkwood. I brought him there at last, and gave him to the elves, for we had agreed that this should be done, and I was glad to be rid of his company, for he stank. For my part, I hope I never have to look upon him again. But Gandalf came and endured long speech with him. Yes, long and weary, said Gandalf, but not without profit. But I learned then that Gollum's ring came out of the great river nigh to the Gladden fields, and I learned that he had possessed it long, many lives of his small kind. The power of the ring had lengthened his years far beyond their span, but that power only the great rings wield. If that is not proof enough, there is the other test that I spoke of. Upon this very ring which you have seen held here aloft, round and unadorned, the letters that Isildur reported may still be read, if one has the strength of will to set the golden thing in the fire a while, that I have done, and this I have read. Know also, my friends, that I learned more yet from Gollum. He was loath to speak, and his tale was unclear, but it is beyond all doubt that he went to Mordor, and that all that he knew was forced from him. Thus the enemy knows that the One Ring is found, it knows that it was in the Shire, and his servants have pursued it almost to our door. He soon will know, although he may know already, even as I speak, that we have it here. All sat silent for a while, until at length Boromir spoke. He is a small thing, you say, this Gollum, small but great in mischief. What became of him? To what doom did you put him?
"He is in prison, but no worse," said Aragorn. "He had suffered much. There is no doubt that he was tormented, and the fear of Sauron lies black on his heart. Still, I for one am glad that he is safely kept by the watchful elves of Mirkwood. He could work much mischief still if he were free, and I do not doubt that he was allowed to leave Mordor on some evil errand." "Alas, alas!" cried Legolas, and in his fair elvish face there was great distress. "The tidings that I was sent to bring must now be told. They are not good, but only here have I learned how evil they may seem to this company. Smeagol, who is now called Gollum, has escaped." "Escaped!" cried Aragorn. "That is ill news indeed." "Well, well, he is gone," said Gandalf. "We have no time to seek for him again. We must do what we will, but he may play a part in that neither he nor Sauron have foreseen. Now I will answer the other questions. What of Saruman? What are his counsels to us in this need? This tale I must tell in full, for only Elrond has heard it yet, and that in brief. But it will bear on us all, and we must resolve. It is the last chapter in the Tale of the Ring, so far as it has yet gone.